Dr. Judith Briles, and you're back for another fun episode on the AuthorU, Your Guide to Book Publishing. And I say fun because I've had our guests with me before, and we always have fun, and we go down different avenues and roads that sometimes I did not know we were going to go down. With that said, I always like to give you some ahas, some strategies, some tips for your author success. That's the goal. I always want to start with a quote from my book, Snappy, Sassy, Salty Success for Authors and Writers. And this is totally appropriate today because it's really simple. It's only 2 lines, 8 words. Write fast, edit slow, and more than once. So we're talking about really your writing and your editing and some of the trends that have evolved. Some of the things that used to be, oh my God, we have to pay attention to this, and have lessened over the past year with the passage of time or the codes or the culture, or you can fill in the blank. I always want to thank our sponsors, which are the Book Shepherd, AuthorU.org, a membership organization for authors who want to be seriously successful. The Book Shepherd is moi, and that's where I do my consulting. So if you want a book that wants to rock, and you'll never have to apologize for it, do contact me. And then our 2 fabulous graphic people who design interiors, exteriors. They do swag for authors. Rebecca Finkel of FPGD really does some awesome websites that do the whole branding transition. And Nick Zellinger, who really takes it to another level, and has done some wonderful, wonderful children's books and the like. So they have both done several of my books. Rebecca just finished my brand new book that just came off the press, called Cooking with Judith. So we have recipes for comfort food. With that said, Barb Wilson is with us. I can call her Barb White because she's going to change her hair soon again.
Yes.
Anyway, so
again.
Yeah, Barb Wilson is with us today. And I want to remind all of you that you could pick this up audio or video and go to my YouTube channel. And it just kind of docks there and all the new ones pop up. So we're going to talk about really what the trends are for 2025, some changes as we go forward, and mishaps, ahas, things you shouldn't do. You can feel this virtually come across and slap you on your head. Do not do this. And really to make your words look good, because that's really one of the jobs of an editor, to make our words good. So with that, Barb, welcome back to the show.
Oh, Judith, it's a pleasure to be back. Do you realize as of this year, as of 2025, we've worked together for 10 years?
Are you kidding?
No.
So should we have a party?
I think we should. I think we should have some virtual champagne. Las Vegas Writers Conference in 2015 is when Judith and I first got our heads together and started talking. And it's been such I feel like quoting Ken Kesey now, it's such a long, strange trip, because who would have ever thought where we would end up and what we would do and the things we would accomplish.
All started in Henderson, Nevada. There you go.
Yes. I mean, how many listeners have actually been to a writing conference that has a safe word, and we're the ones who gave them the safe word? We have so much fun that we get off track, and sometimes we need to gently be directed back. So we did give the audience permission to say, hey, yell Vegas, and we'll go back to the subject. Yeah. So we had a wonderful time. I was there as a trio of writers at the time, representing a small digital press, and we were there to solicit manuscripts. A lot has happened since then. Right now, I'm primarily, and for the last 10 years, I am primarily part of Judith's work process in-house, although I do have individual clients as well. And Judith is, we've had some lovely discussions about where things are going, especially with her toe dipping into fiction and historical fiction.
And who will get the next book within 2 weeks?
Okie dokie. That I'll put that on my calendar.
It's a big one.
It's a big one. Well, how many pages? What are you looking at?
Oh, it's close to 120,000 words. It's a big one.
Heavenly days. You're turning into Diana Gabaldon here.
It's gotten, yeah, it's just really kind of grew. So much was going on, and we had to take a bunch out to move it into the fourth book. That's just nope, we don't need it here. It's going to be in the fourth book. So,
and Judith is just pointing out some of the things that must be considered if any of you writers out there are considering a multi-book series or a series that spans across multiple books, even if it has interlocking characters. She just pointed out you have to have a very meticulous way of keeping track of what's happening, to who, and when, because your timeline has to be straight and it's not just within one book. Editors can be valuable in those kind of situations. What you don't want is your editor to give the book back after they've looked at it and say, this jumps around too much. What's happening here? You've got him doing the same thing 4 times on 4 different pages in the same scene. And it's very easy to fall into that.
I think one of the other things that I've really learned, and I have to, my co-author on this, I had to drill him, and we took out a whole, really, it's a sweet chapter. It's a lovely chapter. And I said, we may want to open the next book with this chapter, with that and that. But the question I think always every author needs to ask is, does this move the story forward?
Chekhov's gun. Why would you have it in the scene? Why would you foreshadow it? Why would you do anything to include this or mention it or give it any stage time if it's not going to be important later? I have been talking and doing editing for so long, some of it's rubbed off on my husband, and he will look at movies now and say, oh, he just foreshadowed. That's going to be important.
Oh, now that's funny.
I'm like, well, okay, I'm going to hire you as an assistant editor here. But he's learned from all the talking that I've done and all the clients I've had and counseled and talked down off the ledges.
Yeah.
Writing is work. Editing is more work. And in certain times, editing can be more painful work than writing.
I think it's the editing, the painful side. I always love to tell a story. When I sent my first book in, I thought it was perfect. And St. Martin's Press was the winning publisher of it. And when I talked to the acquiring editor, who stayed with me the whole time, not like they do today in New York. They have so many different things that whoever is your editor is not rarely the person who buys the book. They bring it in and they assign it now. In most cases, that's most cases for mid-list authors. And I remember Hope saying that, okay, so, and she says, well, okay, I see this being published in June. And now this is December. June's so long. And then it was June next year. And she says, well, there's editing that has to be done. And there's been there, but here I thought all that was done. So it's kind of a surprise, but editors' jobs are to make your writing look better. And they do, but I have to tell you, when I got the red lines back, and that's when you're sending paper back and forth, coming back and forth, I was kind of in shell shock of how much was going to be done. And those were the days when they expected a book to be 82,000 words for my nonfiction book, and it really was going to be much under that. And so they're pushing stuff and they're moving things around, and it's like, whoa, what happened here? So I guess you need to know what to expect. Yeah.
Your snappy, sassy, salty, short is the new black. They haven't read that. No, it's a business, and it is a painful business. And when you go through all the determination and the information gathering and the imagining and the sitting and the rewriting and the And you get done and this book is done. And you say, oh, it's perfect. I'm going to send it off. I'm going to find an editor. I'm going to submit it to a publisher. That's kind of where the next level of pain starts, because you're probably going to get back some critiques. And especially if you're working with an editor that you hired prior to sending it anywhere, that will be an what I call an in your face edit, because it is me looking at your book. I am not a beta reader. I'm an editor. I do this for a living. And I look at this book and I say, gosh, this really doesn't work. I'm on page 6 and I haven't figured out what's happening yet. And I have seen those kind of books.
I have my hands on one kind of a little bit of that right now. And she's had multiple beta readers and all that. And I'm already going through this as I'm just saying, because again, that are your beta readers the buyer of your, that is a question, by the way, you all need to ask. If you're asking other people to read your book, would they be a buyer of that book? Because there's going to be a different connection. If this is a genre they read, or they would, or whether it's fiction or nonfiction, I don't care. Would they be a buyer of that book? I think it helps on that feedback loop. But when it gets to the editor, it's a different game. Totally.
And quite often people's beta group either consists of people from their, if they have one, people from their writing circle or their writing club, people that are friends that they said, hey, I want you to read this book and tell me what you think. Or it's a family member. And out of all of those groups, none of them, but probably the writing group would be the most upfront, but nobody else is going to say, wow, what a piece of dreck. Or this just isn't, it doesn't flow. The people aren't real. You're making, these, they don't come alive. They don't. And I had one book where I actually had to tell the author that all of her characters spoke exactly alike. They all spoke. Yeah. And I said, you haven't made them separate. They all sort of sound like you. Exactly. And you need to create a character and in this story that are different. I mean, if you have a dialogue scene and you don't have dialogue tags and names and identifiers, I really can't tell who's speaking because they all sound like you.
I think it's also, let's go back to what you said about the timeline. I think it's really important to number one, know who your characters. Like I have a historical fiction series, and our characters go throughout it. I mean, we do wax them. I mean, we be willing to kill a few people. You have to eliminate some of them, especially bad people. I eliminate. But we're letting one of the really bad people. We're going to do a zap on him in the end of the 3rd book. He gets zapped, but he doesn't die. We took care of another bad person. We were going to actually zap him at the end of the 3rd book that we're just finishing, but we couldn't hold back. My writing partner, we couldn't hold back. We were going to take this guy out really fast and dismember him in the process, which is what we did. It's coming, Barb, to you.
Oh, and I can't wait to see this, because this is, it's kind of a bloodthirsty thing, but you tend to dump a lot of rage into your writing if you're aggravated about something and you've had one of those days where things haven't gone right, and you thought you had the parking space at the grocery store and somebody pulls in ahead of you and you got cut off in traffic, and you spilled your tea and broke your teacup, and you can take all that rage out on these characters, and it's wonderful because you can kill them in really creative ways.
Exactly.
Yes, I went to a I went to a murder writers convention. This was some years ago in Chicago, and there's nothing quite so chilling as to look around and see all these beautiful older women with their heads bent over their crocheting, discussing the efficacy of which poison will kill fastest. And I made my decision that I was never going to mess with it. Don't mess with the mystery writer. They will kill you. And yeah, you'll never be seen again. And
it does happen. I'll just say to everyone, it does happen.
Yeah. I think writers should have people come over and delete their search bars and their search history, because there's somebody that should come in when you're dead and do that, because otherwise it's going to raise eyebrows. And especially you, Judith, you've been into so many different clients that you've helped and coached. Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah, I have. Well, you've done over 1,000 books with other people. So with that said, let's jump into some of the things that are some of our essentials that we need to pay attention to. So your timelines, your characters. I think it's important to understand what's the intentionality of your book.
Oh, absolutely. And you have to kind of understand. And I mean, when I say understand, I mean understand, like get it as a principle. Editors won't teach you how to write. If you have a really lucky one, if you have somebody like Judith, she will work with you and your skills will be improved when she's done. But editors are not the person who is going to tell you that, okay, you really don't know how to write. You can't describe a scene. You can't create a character. You just have a series of unconnected scenes here. That is what the editor will tell you. They will explain how to fix it, but they won't take you by the hand and sit there with you and do it.
I do. Yeah.
Yeah. See, you're so,
I do.
That big heart of yours, Miss Judith.
Well, that's just part of, to me, that's part of the deal. I'm going to teach you how to write better, but also that what I'm sensitive of, and this is another must for all of you, that when you turn your book into someone, it is essential that that person, whoever that person is, honors your voice, that your voice, your methodology and your quirkiness or some of the way you think. And I actually had to go to Barb after another editor had worked at one of my books, because she decided to, it was a different book. I did a different type of writing. It was a book I called The Author's Walk, which I just won another book award for, which is lovely. And but some of the essence of me got pulled out of it, and I took it to back to Barb, who knew what I was working on, and she usually does my fiction. This was a nonfiction book, and we got it back on track. So
that was the Red Bull book. I told you when I was reading it, it was like a triple cappuccino in the morning, followed by a dose of Red Bull delivered via IV. And I think I wrote that in the review, because it was such a strong call to action. And
it's a call to action book, yeah.
But there was a central theme, and there were so many. You didn't just repeat things on the page. There were so many ways you were tying things into that and saying, there's no excuse. You put your butt in your chair and you sit down and you write, and you don't delay. The women writers who are stuck with word blocks have the cleanest houses in the whole wide world, because they will do everything except sit down. If they're blocked, they want it. Oh, I've got to do this, so I can't do that. No. But in chair, hands on keyboard.
So that really does tie in with the perfection problem. That it's a lot of them. Wouldn't we all love to just have royalty roll out of your mouth into your fingers, clicking away and having it come up perfecto? That's not how it works.
No,
it gets messy at times, and that's okay. I am all for doing the massive brain dump that will come up, because there is gems in there. Oh my gosh, there are gems in there that will come out, and then they can be woven, beaded together on that. Just let them come. Just let it get out. So, Barb, what have you seen? If you were to list like do's and don'ts What would be some of the things that you would recommend for this year? We're looking at 225, that maybe they thought was absolutely gospel they had to stay with. They can actually subside a little bit and loosen up on. Anything come to your mind?
I still see people who are convinced that the only real publishing is
Oh.
agented submissions and
Mhm.
the big five. Is it still five or four?
It's going to 4. They're merging again. Yeah.
That's what I thought. And I said, well, that's kind of like buying a lotto ticket and just hoping for the best. Because I said, there's a reason slush piles are called slush piles. And I'm not saying you won't be very lucky and you'll have your
Mm-hmm.
manuscript picked out, but the odds are against it.
Mm-hmm.
What I
Well,
would do,
over 2 million books were published last year.
yes,
2 million, you know, um, a fraction came from New York. Now, I don't want to discourage someone if that is really what your dream is. Certainly you can reach for it, but you better run plan B, because if your book has a time factor and it needs to get out, New York or a traditional publishing arrangement is not where you should be. You need to
absolutely not.
discover the independent market, which is where the players are.
Yeah,
And they're
it's
selling
where,
more books than New York anyway now.
yes, the players are out there. There are dozens of reputable, and I say reputable because you also need to do your homework and find out who is not a scammer and not
Ugh.
a predator. Judith has an excellent take on predatory publishers. And if your
Mhm.
publisher that you've approached says, oh, well, for a mere fill in the blank, we can get this out to you and we'll make sure it appears in bookshelves and we'll make sure it appears here and there and everywhere. And for another mere such and such, we'll make sure it gets on Amazon. There are people who prey on authors who don't know better.
You're
And
naive. I'm just
yeah,
gonna say it's publishing today is overwhelming. But
yes,
what we really want, and it's been overwhelming for, a gazillion years. But what we want to do is for you to get your best word forward. I like that idea.
yes.
The best word forward. So where do you start? Who are your companions? Who are your friends? Who do you want to surround yourself with? And just, Nike said it, just do it. Just start writing. And then you can come back and you start the cleanup, but just work on your stories and get going. So one of the things, I'm just going to throw one, because Barb and I did a podcast last year on sensitivity editing. And that was the buzz thing that was going on, just major thing going on. And a lot of people, a lot of really good writing, good stories were getting thrown under the bus because they didn't pass the sensitivity test. That is, in my opinion, going by the wayside somewhat.
I agree with you. I don't think it has anything to do with the DEI
No, 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 no.
erasement that's going on in Washington, but I think people above all must remember readers, writers, authors, publishers, I hope, but you read a book to be entertained or learn something.
Mhm.
And if the writer's good enough, sometimes you can do both. We have had some marvelous books roll through Judith's team, and I have learned more about, say, the geography of the Far East and India. And you know what
Mhm.
book I'm talking about, Judith.
Mhm. I do.
Uh, Amazing, because I spent a lot of time fact checking that book. Um, when you sit down to write a book, you have to be brave enough to start. You have to be brave enough to keep going, even if that's hard. And you also have to be brave enough to take critique about it from me or from somebody else or your writing circle. Don't take those comments and critiques personally. Writing is a business. Be professional about it.
Mm-hmm. So let me also add something here, because I have to have a call this afternoon with a newbie author, children's books, that was a teacher for many years, and she's written this book. It's a sweet little story on that, but it's not written for the 3 to 5 age group she wrote for. It's important to know who you're writing for. Let's start there. You got to know who
Yes,
you're writing for.
absolutely.
A preschool book is not going to be more than 100 words, folks.
Mm-mm.
It is not
No,
going to be. There are rules,
you're
written
right.
rules, actually. There are rules on that. And it went on, and I'm going, what, you taught these classes. You would not be doing this book, and it's been hard discussions with her, and she won't let it go. And I said, so you want to turn it into a chapter book? Is that what you want to do? So chapter books are not 3 to 5 years old.
No, chapter books are not.
So,
And the tween books, even the ones that were around when I started reading, the Nancy Drew and the Sweet Valley High, and oh my goodness, there were so many. And you knew what you were getting. You knew the story would be good. You knew it created a puzzle for your mind while you're reading it. You were entertained, but you also learned something. So if you're writing for a 3 to 5 year old, depending on the age range of the child, they may be more interested in biting the book and seeing how much of it they can fit in their mouth than, reading it.
Yeah, I had a 1-year-old on my Christmas list here. He got board books. So with that said, let's hop back to some of the things. What do you see that authors need to pay attention to in the editing framework?
In editing framework, the first thing that comes to my mind is have one. Have someone that you know and that you trust, that you can have a relationship with. Have one that you have met that you know is not going anywhere. There are a lot of people out there who have certifications in editing, but they may not have any practical experience. If you have friends who are also authors or authors that you admire through small presses, go out to that deck page at the front and find out who did their editing. If you have the book on Amazon or Barnes and Noble, flip up to the top and see who they list. Quite often they will list their editor.
Well, they will thank them. They'll often
Yes, they'll
acknowledge
thank
them.
them.
Yep.
I
Yep.
have a whole lovely shelf of books that thanked me, and I keep
Yep.
them in my library. But it's also you're giving this person you're giving this person something that's very precious to you. You're trusting them with that, your words, your story, and your effort. And you have to have that kind of a working relationship where you can communicate with each other.
If I have an acknowledgement or a gratitude page, they will certainly include it. But I'll tell you what I do as an author and a publisher. I always include my editor on my copyright page. And any consultants I've worked with, my book designers, they're all right on the copyright page. So,
and you have to be aware, yes, the world is full of people who may have their best interests at heart over yours. They may sell you a rainbow and promise all kinds of things, but you have to sift through those people and find the ones that can actually help you. Ask questions of published authors, of friends, write authors. Contact them via social media and say, your last book was so wonderful. I really enjoyed it. Would you mind telling me who you worked with as your editor? That kind of thing.
Well, let's go back to your ask. I think that it's important to ask. For example, I always think for fiction, I always refer people to any fiction book, you get it. And children's editors are different editors. I had a cookbook editor. They would instantly know if that it says a T for tablespoon in it. No way are you going to put a tablespoon of salt in this one. So there are genre specific editors out there. And then I would ask the question, what books, have been published that you've edited? That will tell you a lot, because then you can go to the magic Amazon. You can look up the book. You can look on the inside sample and just kind of get a feel. That will give you a feel very quickly of what's going on. I think that's so important to see that, to compare
Yes.
it.
And you'll also be able to look at the comments and the
Oh,
reviews,
yes. Oh,
because if
yes.
the reviews are full of things that are very uncomplimentary about phrasing, punctuation, misuse of words, homophone substitution, the plot, meandering plots, things that they didn't enjoy about the book, chances are you probably wouldn't want to work with that editor.
Yeah, I like that says it needs better editing. Hopefully the author will get an editor next time. That's a clue.
Oh, geez. But
And
that's,
I've seen comments like that.
yes. And I have had ones I've been reading, and I have a huge to be read pile that never gets any smaller. And I'm trying to attack some of the ones that are on it. And it's
Mhm.
just, I slap my head and go to the next, because a lot of the people that do choose to indie publish their own book, they self-publish, they look at it, they have a couple people read through it, the friends tell them everything's fine, they may have had a friend who catches all the mistakes for them, read through it. Unless your friend is an editor, she's not an editor. And if she was an English teacher, she's an English
Mhm.
teacher, but she's not an editor. She's not going
Mhm.
to help you fix saggy middles and flat characters. And she's not going to tell you that your pacing is so off what it should be, because you're generating this tension and you're winding up to this huge scene. And there's literally just flat, no action going on.
It's
That's,
just a
yeah,
bunch of words. It's a bunch of
yes.
words.
And
Okay.
it's difficult. And what I have seen coming out recently, and I
Mhm.
don't know if it was a kickback to the sensitivity thing, but so many of the books written in today's world were getting that slap on them that, oh, you can't do this because it's not, it's considered insulting to indigenous people because you did this and this and this.
Oh,
Um, it's like, no,
help me.
what I
Mhm.
have seen is a burst of work coming out in sci-fi, fantasy, paranormal, because then you create the world and you can do whatever you want to it.
Mhm. Mhm.
I've
Yes.
also seen people who are, there's a lot going on in the world today. Judith will also say that, quite a bit happening,
Mhm.
but people take their emotions and quite often they write them out. It gives them fuel to keep going on their book. And if they have a character that they can imbue with, a resting place for the anger and the frustration they're feeling in their life, if he's created well, he'll be a good character and he'll be in that book. Don't expect your family, if your family's reading this, they will tell you it's wonderful because they don't want to hurt your feelings. Quite often, if you hire an editor, your editor, your person like me is going to be the first eyes outside your critique group or your family who have seen this book. When you pay me, I'm not nice. I tell you my professional opinion. I don't hurt feelings. Now Judith is laughing because yes, I'm very forthright, but I will
Yeah.
go through and
Yeah.
say, okay,
You
the
have
reason this
you have
doesn't
to
work.
be. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes,
You have to
you
be.
have to be this way. I got to this part, everything stopped. What happened? Because this isn't hooking together, and I think you want it to hook together. Let's go back and bring that in.
What are
Um,
some of the, I hear the question. I'm looking, I know we're past our halfway mark, but what are the most common mistakes you see? right now?
Well,
You know, you see a variety of things, or for a newbie, or when you're talking with a writing, you know, you're like when we met at Henderson. You know,
oh yeah.
what would be some of those most common mistakes that we
Um,
want to get them to avoid?
well, I hate to say it, but dreaming of being the one book that's plucked out of the slush pile and, you know, turns into Kathleen Woody-Wiss and becomes a multimillionaire because their book is so wonderful. Everyone has that dream. And I will be the first one to tell you, Judith has published far more books than I have. I've only published a couple, but writing is hard work, editing is harder work. And
Mm-hmm.
the work of having backstories that you have to manage and occasionally put on sale and advertising, all of the business of writing that goes with it is very time consuming unless you can afford to have people do it for you. So you need to
So,
be prepared. That people have not thought that through. They're just thinking, wow, I'm going to write a book and it's going to be a fantastic book. Okay, we can get you
and
there.
I've built it, and they will come. No,
Yes.
they won't. That's where book marketing is coming in, but we're not talking about book marketing. We're
No,
talking
we're
about
talking about
creating the
editing.
product to get there, so it's not going to be dinged with a gazillion typos. It's not going to get dinged with repetitive things that should have been chunked out. It's
Repetitive phrases. I've run into that a lot. Someone has a few idiomatic phrases that they say constantly throughout, and I just started highlighting them in yellow. I said, every time you see yellow on that page, you know that we need to do something. And you also have to remember that when you're publishing digitally, your audience is a potentially global audience. If you get too far into idioms and jargon, it will be confusing and possibly unintelligible to
I
whoever's
think that's
reading it.
true. Here's the other thing. I think a common mistake, and all of you can easily help this. You know, you've got a keyboard here. You've got a little control button, and you've got a F, control F. Okay, so bring up a control F. If you find yourself using a word, like my bugaboos are however, you know, they
Oh,
get, or a thus, all that comes from people who are trying to transition from often from an academic environment
oh,
or those kind of things, you know, because I'm ruthless. I'll slash those like crazy. um that I mean, because it does take away from the narrative. It's stodgy and sick. But I remember one time I there was a four-letter word one of my clients loved. He loved that word. And I I remember calling him and I said, "Do you know how many times you have written this word in this book?" And he says, "Well, I don't know, just a few." 185 times. Now, I'm going to let you have a few of those, but they're coming out. So I think you have to realize that we all, and that's that repetition thing, that a good editor will notice how many times. Also is another one. I see also, the word also a lot. The word so a lot. That
just
adjust.
weakens everything.
Hmm.
Just, and it you know, part of it, like what you said, what do I see coming in? I see
Just say it.
people, well, I'm trying to think of a way to be really tactful. I see
You have to
people
be.
who don't, they're doing this as a dream. It's kind of like they woke up and said, I've got X years, I'm this many years old, I'm gonna do this. And they didn't really realize there's a bunch of craft knowledge that you should have. All those boring Friday afternoons in, you know, language class and English class where they taught you how to parse sentences, that's all going to
Yes.
come in handy if you paid attention.
Uh-huh.
If not, you're going to get the remix from me. Um, your
Well,
tenses have to be the same. Your voices have to be the same. You can't write part of the book or every other sentence in present tense and then jump to past tense and present tense and jump to past tense. No,
yeah.
no, no. That's going to get marked all up. If a certain genre is hot, I've had people come up to me at writing conferences, not at yours, Judith, thank you. But I've had them come up and say, oh, okay, so what's the hot topic going to be? What is it coming up? Because that's what I want to write. And I'm a good writer and I'll make a lot of money. And I look at them and I say, is that really what you want to write? Do you feel drawn to write, vampire Eskimos? That's, I'm using it as an example. Oh, not really, but I can do that. I can do that. And it's like, Well, first off, the people who would be excited about reading books about vampire Eskimos, they are going to be able to read this book and know that you aren't really excited about writing it because it's going to come through. Part of the passion and the joy of telling the story and being in these characters' lives, it's all going to be missing. It's going to be vaguely cardboardy.
Yes.
And good editors also fact check things. Poor Judith, I made her insane with her history books. Judith, this is what they wore. No, you can't have them wear that because they didn't do that then. But it's the truth. I mean, we're like the last bastion of grammar, and no one ever thinks they need an editor, but in reality, they need an editor almost as much as they need
everyone.
Judith.
Everyone needs an editor. One of the things, one of the products of COVID was a whole bunch of garbage came out.
Oh my God.
Because people were, okay, I'm going to write the great American novel. I'm going to get this little sucker out. So if you tell them, they have to really understand this thing called writing is a business, if you're really seriously about getting that. So you've got to have some of the understandings of what goes behind it to even get things out. And I find that it's rare when they do until they've gone through the process once and they come back to the party again. Then they get it. Then they can get it. But there's other things that they need to do to put into their toolkit. So Barb, let's talk about a toolkit. What kind of toolkit do we need?
You need a toolkit where you're smart enough to staff the toolbox with things that you're either shaky on or you don't know at all. If you don't know how to create a marketing campaign, you go looking for someone like Judith. If you don't know how to edit books or you want a really flashy kind of a title, you go find Rebecca or Nick. You find the people who can give you what
you
you're
put the
lacking.
team together. Right, but let's say, I've got my pad of paper. Okay. I'm ready to start doing it and the flow. What do you kick off, getting them into the time frame? They're mentally ready to go. They've decluttered their mind or whatever, and they've got an idea. They're feeling very passionate about it. I've always resisted people say you have to write every day. I write every day, but I don't write on my own stuff every day. I'm writing on other people's stuff, but I write every day. So I'm always constantly in that frame, let's say. But how do you, how do you find your space to let the creativity come through?
I'm one of those weird people. I can't write where there's noise. So I don't have any noise canceling headphones. Maybe Santa will bring me some this year, but put the noise canceling headphones on. I get my shooting earmuffs out and put them on. And I dig down. And even though I'm normally a very well organized person, when I'm writing and creating, I have sticky notes everywhere. And I have pads of paper, and I generally have a big graph lined out because I have the story chunked. And I know what will happen. Okay, this is chapter 3. I've done some presentations for Judith about the 9 cubed writing process, and it's a wonderful tool. And there are. Just take a minute. There are wonderful tools out there.
So let's kiss on that, Barb. Let's kiss on it. We've got about 15 minutes max. All right.
Okay.
So focus on, the elements. Let's talk about the elements that go in that 9 cube.
Yep, we have the beginning. We have I call it the inciting incident. The last book that I wrote and published as part of an anthology actually started with that, and the inciting incident was someone got shot. Okay. And then we stepped to another character's point of view, and they were observing what was happening. And so we're introducing the characters, we're giving short descriptions of where they are, and they're in kind of a really crummy, slummy, rundown area. But one of them owns a bar, and the other one was a doctor, and her car broke down in front of this guy's bar, and she went in to see about a tow truck. There was a gang shooting in front of the bar, and they had to summon the doctor. So this whole story is leading up.
Okay, so we have the first cube is you got to have the beginning. So some incident's going to do it. Would the second cube then be your characters?
Characters are developing, and the scenery around them. You can kind of give a little backstory. How the guy ended up there. Is he home? Did he come back home after his time in the service? That kind of thing. And he started this bar, so that's would have a place to hang out. And then she's a nurse, and she's just trying to, get through her years of internship. And so just little hints of things. Now, one thing you don't want to do is start a book with 12 pages of solid dialogue or solid downloading that's backstory and its history. There's ways to bring that out in dialogue. There's ways to allude to it that are not huge chunks. Chunks will choke you, and it will also make your reader go find something else more interesting because it starts coming across like a history lesson. Then you get across to my 9 cubes are like a big square. You get across to the third cube.
Okay, and
third cube is when you've established who they are, where they are, what the plot is. And that's when you get to your first inciting, your first moment in the story where things are, it's going to either unite them or pull them apart, or somehow they're combined. Say she's a tree hugger and he's coming in as a developer to clear cut and put up a solar farm.
Okay.
I mean, these are things and elements that work in the story to twine the characters and their goals and aims together.
Okay.
Then you step down, you start getting into the secondary characters and a little more of the background.
Is that the fourth cube then?
That is the fourth cube. You've met the main characters. That's kind of like Act 1 up here. Right. And you think you know what's coming, then you step down, and then the plot starts unrolling, and you start seeing more of the backstory. And the fifth happens, some things happen, some things are foreshadowed. You get to the 6th cube, and that is 6th and 7th cubes are normally the dark moment in the story. Something happens.
Okay, dark moment. So it can
dark moments.
It continues over. Okay. So
and what
that mean? Would it get more compounded? Would a deeper dive? More people are involved in the mess, whatever the mess is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Suppose she has a crazy grandma who chains herself to a stump. That I'm making all this up here. Chains herself to a stump, but she's on the side of, don't develop my beautiful fields and trees, but she's on the girl's side, but the girl's like, oh my gosh, Gran, I don't want you sitting out here in the cold, and we've got to get you in, and this and that. Well, then your dark moment, because everything looks like it's just literally going to blow up, and then he has an epiphany and says, oh, well, maybe we could peacefully coexist. What if I built my resort on half of this, and then we did have some, nice things start happening, and it runs into a happy for now or happily ever after. Romances are known for that. I love editing them. I love reading them. I personally write them. Favorite genre, because they always have happily ever after endings. And boy, life does not give you those. So,
well, I know what we've done in our historical fiction books. We get to that. We actually have several, we weave several conflicts, battles. Okay. So we get to kind of that ninth cube. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. And then when we open up the first chapter of the next book, all hell breaks loose again. That's kind of what we've been doing.
Yes. But that is how you keep a series rolling.
Yeah,
and
you have to.
What I have also seen is a critique against these are people who are very prolific authors. They'll write a series, but each one will be a cliffhanger, and they'll start releasing the first for free. And they will not get to that ninth box. They'll stop at the eighth, or they'll stop at the darkest moment, because they want you to buy the rest. And I have seen some very strong language, and there are authors, myself among them, I will not buy books that do that have series. It has to be an exceptional book to get my attention, and I want the main thrust of that plot wrapped up. I don't want all the little tags hanging. And there can be an overarching plot. There can be something that lasts all, 5 books or 4 books, but it's a thread that runs through those books.
Yeah, that's what we've done with ours. There's a thread.
Yes.
And people have really been asking us, when is the third book coming out? And I said, in 2 months. It's 2 months. So.
Yes. And you have, well, quite often too, I will see people get the whole series written and then release them 1 month after the other. And you didn't do that because you started organically writing, and then you had no idea it was going to be going on, and it just kept building on itself. So, gosh, you and Brian are a phenomenon. You're just creating these wonderful tales. But part of it is because your characters keep talking to you.
They do. They wake me up, people. And also, you should be aware your characters will talk to you. You need to listen to them, and you need to give them space. If you're writing fiction, you need to give them space to allow that to happen. And then it will, go forward. For the nonfiction authors, your editing is critical, but you still have the timeline. You need to do stories. So I strongly believe in nonfiction books, there should be stories. It's not boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, you need anecdotes. You need anecdotes. Some people respond.
Bring it alive. And sometimes there's going to be narrative with these stories. So the things that we're talking about with fiction is just really important. Barb, we've got like 2 minutes left. So what can we throw out for people? I'm so glad you kissed on the cube.
Oh yeah, the cube. I live and die by that cube.
Yeah.
And it's a great way to make sure you don't miss any essentials. And it's a great way to remind you where you are, because in your head where something should be fitting in, and right where to put it. I find the best editor and the most trusted editor that you can afford. Yes, we are pricey. Yes, I know that.
This is this is the investment in your book.
It's an investment in your book and in your own success. AI is not an editor. Be careful of that. There are programs that will try and convince you that they are. What there are people that are very interested in having you succeed because we helped you get there.
Yeah.
People like me, people like Judith, Rebecca, Nick. Find those people that you want on your team and go with them.
So I think one of the things I do want to say to all of you, that whatever you're writing, whatever genre, whether fiction or nonfiction, I don't care. You need to read comparable books out there that are doing well.
Yes.
Why are they doing well? What kind of phraseology, what kind of jargon are they doing? How are they breaking it? You need to actually get the book, maybe get two, read one for pleasure, but get ready to maybe rip it apart, that you're going to do that and notice, because I will write all over things, because that will be one of the best teachers for you. When someone tells me they don't read, whether they're a romance writer, well, I don't read Nora Roberts, or I don't read any of these others, I say you're making a huge mistake with that. Barb Wilson, we're going to have to shut down. Thank you.
A
Thank you. Thank
pleasure
you.
as always, Miss Judith.
So everyone remember the 9 cubes, where you got to have a beginning and you have an end. That's called the resolution. And you have all these roller coasters in between.
It will teach you
bring
how
it
to
about.
structure your plot and identify your characters.
And you can do it that way. All right, everyone. Thank you for being with us. And we're going to wave goodbye. I'll see you next week for another program. Have fun and happy writing.